"Don't touch the light between my legs," Alien Girl warned, but it was too late. The space station drifted quietly through the endless blackness of space, its lights flickering as the artificial gravity hummed beneath the feet of its inhabitants. Dr. Leo Harris had spent countless hours aboard the station, conducting research, but nothing could have prepared him for the strange, unexpected encounter that awaited him that day. Leo had been one of the lead scientists studying alien life forms, tasked with exploring new species to further humanity's knowledge of the universe. It was supposed to be a routine mission. They had discovered a new form of intelligent alien life on a distant planet. The planet was barren and cold, its surface covered with snow and ice. But beneath the frozen landscape, something ancient had been hidden, something that could change the fate of mankind forever. That's when he found her. She was unlike anything Leo had ever seen. The alien girl lay unconscious in a hidden chamber beneath the icy surface of the planet, her skin shimmering like polished silver, her eyes wide and glowing a strange, unnatural violet. Her hair was a pale platinum blonde, cascading around her in delicate waves, almost as if it had a life of its own. She seemed so delicate, yet there was an undeniable aura of power surrounding her. The team had worked tirelessly to bring her back to the station, but when Leo was the one to inspect her, he found something off. There was a strange energy coming from her body, pulsating like a heartbeat. It was subtle but powerful. As the alien girl slowly regained consciousness, Leo watched her carefully. She opened her eyes, which were wide with fear, her gaze darting around the sterile environment of the station's medical bay. She gasped, struggling against the medical restraints that held her in place. "Don't touch the light between my legs," she whispered hoarsely, her voice weak but urgent. "It's not what you think." Leo was stunned. He had heard alien species speak in cryptic, strange ways before, but this felt different. The girl's warning sent a chill down his spine. Her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made him feel like he was being drawn into her very soul. Her words didn't make sense, but they were clear. She was terrified of something. Leo's mind raced. What did she mean by the light between her legs? Could it be a source of her power, something she had been carrying with her from her planet? He reached out, instinctively wanting to comfort her, but as his hand neared her, she recoiled, her body tensing in fear. Her warning echoed in his mind, "Don't touch the light." But Leo couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than met the eye. He couldn't help it. He needed to know more. Ignoring the warning, he gently touched the side of her arm, moving closer to examine her in more detail. Her body was covered in a strange, glowing pattern, lines of light tracing along her skin. It looked like some kind of ancient script, but it was unlike anything Leo had ever seen. The girl's breathing quickened as he moved closer, her eyes wide in panic. "Please," she begged, her voice barely a whisper. "I told you not to." Leo hesitated. He could feel the growing tension in the air, but his curiosity won over. With careful hands, he reached for the glowing pattern at the center of her body. It seemed to pulse with energy like a living thing. As soon as his fingers brushed against it, something within her shifted. A surge of power, raw and untamed, shot through the room. The lights flickered, the station's hum distorted as if the very structure of the station had been shaken by an unseen force. The alien girl gasped, her body seizing as though she were in immense pain. "You shouldn't have." Before she could finish, her body went limp, and she collapsed back onto the table, unconscious again. The strange energy that had surrounded her faded, leaving Leo standing there, heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea what he had just done, but it was clear that he had triggered something dangerous, something that had been dormant for far too long. Leo's mind raced as he stood there, staring at the alien girl. He didn't know what kind of power she possessed, but one thing was clear. He had to figure it out. He had just made a grave mistake, but it wasn't too late to fix it. He had to help her, and in doing so, maybe he could uncover the secrets of her species and the unimaginable power that had been hidden for so long. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden flicker of lights overhead, followed by the harsh, mechanical voice of the station's AI. "Warning, unauthorized energy surge detected. System malfunction imminent." Leo's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary power surge, it was a warning. The very fabric of the station seemed to be at risk. The girl, whoever she was not just any alien. She was a weapon, and now Leo had unleashed it. He glanced at her again, her body still lying motionless on the table. He had made a mistake, but he couldn't go back now. The damage was done. As he prepared to move quickly, the girl stirred once more, her eyes fluttering open as she slowly regained consciousness. This time her gaze was filled with something far more intense than fear. It was determination. "Do you realize what you've done?" she whispered, her voice full of urgency. Leo swallowed hard, knowing that there was no turning back now. "What is happening?" he asked, trying to understand the magnitude of what he had triggered. She looked at him, her eyes glowing with the same strange energy that had surged through the station moments before. "You've awakened something ancient," she said, her voice low but clear. "And now there's no stopping it." The room seemed to grow colder as the walls around them hummed with the power of the alien light. Leo realized that this was just the beginning. He had no idea what he had unleashed, but it was already too late to turn back. And so the true adventure began. Leo's heart pounded as the alien girl's words echoed in his mind. "You've awakened something ancient." The power that had surged through the space station had been nothing short of terrifying, and it was clear now that he was in way over his head. The calm, routine life he had known on the station had just turned into something far more dangerous. The girl, still lying on the medical table, slowly sat up, her eyes glowing faintly with that same strange violet light. Her skin, which had once appeared delicate and fragile, now seemed to pulse with a strange energy. She was no longer the unconscious, weak being he had first encountered. There was something about her, something otherworldly, that made Leo feel both awe and fear. "Tell me what happened," Leo said, trying to keep his voice steady. He knew he had made a mistake by touching the light, but he needed answers. The station's AI had warned of a malfunction, but the true cause was still unclear. The girl looked at him, her gaze sharp and intense. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaking slightly but still full of power. "The light that you touched, it's not just an energy source, it's part of me, part of my species, it's alive." Leo blinked, alive. He had assumed the glowing light was some sort of technology or artifact, not something living. But the way she spoke, the way the power had surged when he touched it, made him think twice. "My name is Elijah," she continued, "and I am the last of my kind. My people created the light and they used it to build empires to travel across the stars. But in the end, the light became their downfall." Leo tried to process what she was saying. The downfall of her people? Could the light be responsible for something catastrophic? He had no idea, but the station's warnings only seemed to confirm that the light was dangerous. "I don't understand," Leo said, shaking his head. "If it's so dangerous, why didn't you stop me from touching it?" Elijah's eyes flickered with pain, and for a moment her expression softened. "I couldn't. The light. It draws people in, it calls to them, even me." She looked down, her hands trembling as she clenched the edges of the table. "When I was born, I was given the task of guarding the light, but I've never fully controlled it. No one ever has. The power it holds is too great." Leo's thoughts raced. A guard. Elijah wasn't just some alien. She was a protector, the last of a race that had wielded power unlike anything he had ever imagined. And now, because of his curiosity, that power was unleashed. "I'm sorry," Leo said, his voice full of guilt. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Elijah's gaze remained steady. "It's not your fault. You were curious, and the light responds to curiosity. It seeks to be understood, but it's not meant for human hands. You've only scratched the surface of what it can do." The lights in the room flickered again, and the hum of the station seemed to grow louder. The station was no longer stable. Whatever Elijah had warned him about was beginning to unfold. He had no idea how much time they had before everything went wrong. "We need to move," Leo said urgently. "We don't have time to figure all this out here. The station is already unstable. We need to find a way to stop this before it's too late." Elijah nodded, slowly standing up. She was stronger now, the faint glow of her body casting a soft light in the dim room. "There's no easy way to stop it," she said. "Once the light is activated, it sets off a chain of events. The longer it's exposed to human technology, the more it will spread. The station's systems are already overloaded. It's only a matter of time before everything crashes." Leo's mind raced. He needed a plan. How do you stop a force that could destroy a space station? "We need to find the control center," Leo said. "We need to disconnect the station's power systems from the light before it causes more damage." Elijah shook her head. "It won't be enough. The light is connected to everything. The more you try to sever the connection, the more it will fight back." Leo's frustration grew. This was too much to process. He was just a scientist. He wasn't equipped to handle a situation like this. But Elijah was right. He had to act quickly. He grabbed a nearby datapad and started scanning the station systems. "I'm going to try and find the main power grid," he said, focusing on the screen. "If I can get into the core, I might be able to override the systems manually." Elijah stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "You won't be able to do it alone. The light is already taking control of the station. It's not just a power source. It's a living entity. It will stop you." Leo looked up at her, his eyes filled with determination. "Then we'll stop it together." The alien girl hesitated, but then nodded. "I've been alone for so long. I didn't want anyone else to suffer because of my people's mistakes. But you're right. We have to stop this." Together, they moved quickly through the darkened halls of the space station, the flickering lights casting long shadows on the walls. The atmosphere was tense, the hum of the station now a low, ominous growl. Every corner Leo turned, he felt as if something was watching them, something alive and hungry. As they reached the control center, the door slid open with a hiss. Inside, the control panels were flickering wildly, and the screens were filled with chaotic data. The power surges had corrupted the station's systems completely. "This is it," Leo said, his voice tight with urgency. "If I can get to the main console, we can try to reroute the power, but I'll need your help. I don't know how long the station will hold up." Elijah stepped forward, her eyes scanning the panels. "I can guide you," she said quietly. "But you need to be ready for what happens next. Once we touch the core, the light will fight back. You have to be prepared for the consequences." Leo nodded, his pulse quickening. He didn't know if they could stop it, but they had to try. There was no other choice. He moved to the console, his fingers flying over the keys, inputting commands as fast as he could. As he connected to the core, a low hum began to fill the room. The light, which had been dormant for so long, was awakening again. It was responding to their actions. But this time, Leo wasn't alone. Elijah stood by his side, the two of them working together to keep the station from falling apart. The lights flickered once more, and the hum grew louder. The light in Elijah's body pulsed, brighter and more intense. It was as if the station itself was alive, and it was fighting to remain in control. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and the room seemed to shake. The station was on the verge of collapse. Leo's fingers trembled as he typed in the final command, but it was too late. The power surge had already reached critical levels. Elijah turned to him, her face pale but resolute. "We have to finish this," she said, her voice full of finality. "There's no turning back now." Leo could only nod, knowing that the next move would determine the fate of both the station and its inhabitants. The hum of the station grew louder, almost deafening now. The walls of the control room seemed to vibrate, the lights flickering erratically as if the very structure of the station was fighting against them. Leo's fingers trembled as he tried to enter the final command, but the screen in front of him continued to glitch, the system fighting back against his attempts to reroute the power. Elijah stood next to him, her eyes wide with fear. The glowing light within her body pulsed in rhythm with the station's instability. She could feel the energy building, could sense the light's power growing stronger with every second they wasted. "We're running out of time," she said, her voice strained. "If we don't stop this now, it will be too late. The light, it's going to consume everything." Leo's breath caught in his throat. He could see the data on the console, the power surge was escalating, and it seemed like the core of the station was about to explode. They had to act now or they would all be doomed. "I can't stop it manually," Leo said, his voice tight with frustration. "The system is too far gone." Elijah's eyes glowed even brighter as the light inside her intensified. She stepped forward, placing her hand on the console beside Leo's. "I'll do it," she said, her voice full of resolve. "I can connect to the light, it's the only way." Leo stared at her, unsure. "But if you connect to it—" "I know," she interrupted. "It could kill me. But it's the only way we can shut it down." She took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment as if preparing herself. The light inside her flickered violently, and then she placed both hands on the console, her fingertips touching the control panel. At first, nothing happened, but then the station seemed to respond. The walls of the room began to pulse with the same rhythm as the energy inside her. Leah watched in awe and fear as her body radiated with light, brighter than ever before. It was as if she had become one with the power of the station itself. The humming sound grew louder. The light inside her flared, casting strange shadows across the walls. Leo felt a rush of cold air, as if the room itself was being sucked into the core. Elijah's breath came in shallow gasps. Her hands trembled, but she kept them firmly on the console, connecting herself to the light. The power was overwhelming, but she didn't flinch. "This is it," she whispered. "I can feel it. It's responding to me." Leo watched helplessly, unsure if he could do anything to help her. He could see the strain on her face, the sweat on her forehead, and the way her body shook as if the light inside her was trying to tear her apart. The station's systems flickered once again, but this time the fluctuations seemed to stabilize. The power surges began to slow, and for a moment it seemed like they were making progress. But then the lights in the room flashed red and the computer screen in front of Leo went blank. "No," Leo whispered. "No, no, no." The station was still failing and the power was still building. The light was fighting back. Elijah had connected with it, but it wasn't enough. The station's core was too unstable, and the energy contained within it was too powerful. Elijah's body jerked as if she had been struck by an electric current. Her hands shot away from the console as the light inside her exploded in a blinding flash. Leo stumbled backward, shielding his eyes from the sudden surge of brightness. When the light faded, he looked up and saw her. Elijah was collapsed on the floor, her body limp and unresponsive. Her once glowing form was now dim, the energy inside her completely drained. "Elijah," Leo shouted, rushing to her side. He knelt down beside her, feeling for a pulse. There was none. His heart sank as panic gripped him. She had given everything to stop the light, but it hadn't been enough. She had sacrificed herself, and it looked like she had paid the ultimate price. But then, just as he was about to give up hope, her chest rose and fell with a faint breath. She was alive, but barely. "Elijah," Leo whispered again, gently shaking her shoulders. "You have to wake up, please, we need you." Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked up at him with a faint smile, her voice barely audible. "I told you it would take everything to stop it." Leo's heart pounded in his chest. "You're going to be okay, you have to be okay." But Elijah shook her head weakly. "No, it's not over, the light. It's still connected to me. It's inside me and it's spreading. You need to stop it before it's too late." Leo's mind raced. He hadn't even considered that the light could still be spreading. If it had already started to consume the station, what was stopping it from spreading to the rest of the galaxy? If they didn't stop it now, it could destroy everything. He helped her sit up, supporting her weight as she struggled to stay conscious. The room was growing colder and the walls were shaking more violently. The station was still on the brink of collapse. "We need to find the core," Leo said urgently. "We need to shut it down before it spreads any further." Elijah nodded weakly, but her voice was barely a whisper. I can't go any further, the light. It's too strong." Leo clenched his fists in frustration. He couldn't let it end like this. He had to do something, and fast. "We're not giving up," he said, determination flooding his voice. "We're going to fix this no matter what it takes." He carefully helped Elijah to her feet, supporting her as she leaned heavily on him. Together they stumbled toward the door of the control room, moving through the dark, shaking halls of the station. The air felt thick, charged with energy, and Leo could feel the light growing stronger the closer they got to the core. They were running out of time. The station's alarms blared and the lights flickered one last time before going dark. The station's core was just ahead, and they had no idea if they could make it in time. But they had no choice. They had to stop the light. Or everything would be lost. The station was shaking violently now. Each step Leo took was accompanied by the groan of metal and the distant sound of alarms echoing through the halls. He could feel the heat building, the walls growing warmer as the energy inside the station swirled out of control. Elijah's weakened form leaned against him, her body trembling with every movement. They had to make it to the core. Leo knew that if they didn't stop it now, everything they had worked for would be lost. The station would collapse, and the light inside Elijah would spread to the rest of the galaxy, destroying everything in its path. "We're almost there," Leo muttered, his breath coming in short gasps. He glanced down at Elijah, her face pale but determined. Her eyes glowed faintly with the same eerie violet light that had haunted them since the moment they met. Despite her exhaustion, she was holding on just barely. I can feel it," she whispered, her voice weak but steady. "The core, it's calling to me, it's trying to connect again." Leo's grip on her tightened. "We're going to stop it. You don't have to do this alone." Elijah gave him a small, faint smile. "I don't have much left to give, but together, maybe we can save it, save everything." They reached the main corridor that led to the core, and Leo could feel the intensity of the power surging through the station. It was as if the very walls were alive, pulsing with energy, pushing against them. The doors to the core chamber were sealed, but Leo didn't hesitate. He pressed his hand to the panel beside it, and the door slid open with a loud hiss. The room beyond was bathed in a soft, eerie glow. The core of the station was a massive, complex structure of metal and glowing circuits. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of the power humanity had learned to harness, and how easily it could slip out of control. Leo took a step forward, but Elijah stopped him. Her hand, still faintly glowing, rested gently on his arm. "I can't hold it off for long," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You have to be ready for anything." Leo nodded, steeling himself. The time for hesitation was long past. They were all in, and there was no going back. They approached the core, and Leo could feel the heat radiating from it. The power inside the chamber seemed to throb like a heartbeat. The light was stronger now, and Elijah's connection to it was undeniable. She was no longer just a guardian, she was one with the power itself. "I'm going to try to disconnect the core's power lines," Leo said, moving toward a nearby console. "It's our only shot." Elijah stood still, her eyes closed in concentration. The glow in her body flared brighter, and Leo could feel the room pulsing with energy. She was reaching out to the light, trying to keep it contained, but Leo could see the strain on her face. She was fading fast. "I'm almost there," Leo said, his fingers flying over the console. He could see the systems trying to fight back, but he knew the longer they waited, the more dangerous it would become. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the chamber, followed by a sharp, twisting sound. The light from the core began to twist, forming swirling patterns in the air, reaching out toward them like tendrils. It was as if the light was alive, aware of their attempts to stop it. "No!" Elijah shouted, her voice hoarse. She fell to her knees, her hands pressed against her head as if trying to block the light from overwhelming her. "It's fighting back!" Leo rushed to her side, but she pushed him away, her eyes wild with fear. "You don't understand," she gasped. "The light is connected to me. If you disconnect the core, it will consume me completely. I won't be able to control it." Leo's heart dropped. "No, we can't let it take you." But Elijah shook her head weakly. "It's the only way. I've already given everything I have. Now it's your turn. You have to stop it." "For both of us?" Leo felt a surge of panic, but he knew what he had to do. He wasn't just fighting for the station anymore. He was fighting for her, for everything they had worked for. He turned back to the console and began to enter the final command. The core's power lines flickered, and the energy swirling in the air seemed to slow, as if waiting for the inevitable. "You can do this," Elijah said softly, her voice almost drowned out by the rising hum of the station's failing systems. "I believe in you." With a final, desperate push, Leo hit the last button. For a moment, everything went silent. The room seemed to hold its breath, and for a brief instant, Leo thought they had failed. But then, the lights flickered once more, and the power in the core began to drain. The light began to retreat, its power slowly dissipating as the core's systems shut down. Elijah's body, which had been glowing so brightly, started to fade. She slumped forward, her breathing shallow but steady. Leo rushed to her side again, his heart racing. "Elijah." "Elijah, please." She looked up at him, her eyes no longer glowing but filled with gratitude. "You did it. You saved us." The core was now silent, its power contained. The station's systems began to stabilize, and the alarms that had been blaring for what felt like hours finally fell silent. The danger had passed, but the price had been high. Leo helped Elijah to her feet, her body weak, but no longer radiating the dangerous energy it once had. She leaned on him for support, but there was a calmness in her eyes now. The battle had been won, but the cost was still heavy on both of them. I didn't think we'd make it," Leo admitted, his voice filled with exhaustion. Elijah smiled softly, her eyes tired but serene. "We did," she said, "together." Leo held her close for a moment, feeling the weight of the last few hours pressing down on him. But as the station began to return to normal, he knew that they had done something extraordinary. They had faced a force greater than them, and they had won. They weren't just survivors. They were heroes. The room was silent now, save for the soft hum of the station's systems as they slowly came back to life. The lights flickered on, casting a pale glow over the now-still core. The chaos that had gripped the station only moments before seemed to be fading, leaving behind a heavy silence. Leo stood there, his body aching, his mind spinning. He couldn't believe they had made it through. Elijah leaned against him, her breath still shallow but steady. Her skin, once glowing with energy, was now dull, and the faint violet light that had filled her eyes was completely gone. She was weak, but she was alive, and for that Leo was grateful. They had both fought so hard to stop the power that could have destroyed everything, and now, as the danger passed, he allowed himself a brief moment of relief. "Is it over?" Leo asked quietly, looking at the still core. It was hard to believe it was finally done. The power surges had been terrifying, and he had feared the worst. But now the station seemed stable. The light that had once threatened to tear everything apart was no longer a threat, for now at least they were safe. Elijah nodded slowly. "Yes, the core is neutralized. The light is contained." Her voice was weak, but there was a certain peace in it now. She closed her eyes for a moment, her body slumping further against Leo. "I'm sorry, I couldn't do more, but we did it together." Leo glanced down at her, feeling a mix of emotions. Relief, exhaustion, but also sadness. They had come so close to losing everything, and in the process, Elijah had paid the price for saving them all. "You did more than enough," Leo replied softly. He brushed a lock of her platinum blonde hair away from her face, his fingers trembling slightly. "You saved us. You saved me." Elijah smiled faintly, but it was a smile filled with both weariness and acceptance. "I wasn't alone," she said. "You were with me. We did it together." Leo helped her sit down on the cold floor of the core chamber. She looked exhausted, but there was a peace about her now. She had done everything she could, and now it was time for both of them to rest. But Leo couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss. She had given so much, and though she had saved them, there was still something fragile about her. Her energy, her life force, was still fading. Leo could see it in the way she barely held herself upright. "I need to get you to the medical bay," Leo said urgently, his hands shaking as he helped her steady herself. "You need rest, you need treatment." "I'll be fine," Elijah whispered. "I've been through worse, and I've lived this long, but we can't go back to the way things were." Leo frowned. "What do you mean?" "The light," she said, her voice distant. "It was meant to save my people, but it became something else, something uncontrollable. I'm the last one, and now, because of what we did, the light is dormant, but I can never live the same way again." Leo's heart sank. "But you're alive, that's what matters." Elijah's eyes met his, and for the first time he saw a hint of sadness in them. "Maybe, but the light isn't just a part of me, it was me. It was what made me who I was, what made my people who they were. And now that it's gone, I don't know what's left. I don't know who I am without it." Leo didn't have an answer. How could he? He couldn't fully understand what she had gone through or what it meant to lose something so integral to her being. But he did understand one thing. He wasn't going to leave her alone. Not now, not ever. "We'll figure it out," Leo said, his voice firm. "Together." For a moment, Elijah said nothing, her gaze fixed on the now-still core. The glowing light that had once threatened to destroy everything was now just a memory. The station was safe, and for that, Leo was thankful. But there was a deeper sense of loss within him, something he couldn't quite explain. The light had been a part of Elijah, and now that it was gone, so much of who she was seemed to have disappeared with it. Elijah turned her gaze back to him. "Thank you, Leo. For believing in me, for trusting me." He smiled softly, though the weight of everything they had been through still pressed heavily on him. "You saved us. I couldn't have done it without you." She looked up at him, her eyes tired but clear. "You never had to do it alone. We were always together in this." Leo helped her stand, steadying her as she wobbled slightly. She was still weak, but there was strength in her, too. She had survived, and so had he. They made their way out of the core chamber, moving through the now-quiet station. The hum of the systems was back to normal, the alarms no longer blaring. It was as if nothing had ever happened. But Leo knew better. They had both been through something that would change them forever. When they reached the medical bay, Leo helped Elijah onto a bed. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but there was a sense of peace there now, too. The light inside her was no longer raging, no longer threatening to destroy everything. It was simply gone. Elijah lay back, her eyes closing slowly. "I'm glad you're here," she murmured. Leo sat beside her, his hand resting gently on hers. "I'm not going anywhere." As the station settled into a quiet, stable rhythm, Leo realized that they had both been through something beyond their control. They had fought against forces greater than themselves, and yet they had come out on the other side. The station was safe, the light was contained, and they were alive. It was more than they had ever hoped for. But as Leo sat there, watching over Elijah, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The light was gone, but so much of what it had meant for her was still unclear. Would she ever be the same? Could they find a way to live in a world without it? For now, Leo didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to let her face the future alone. And so they sat in silence, side by side, waiting for the dawn of a new day. A day where they would rebuild, where they would find their way forward, together.